Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and it looks like the floodgates are open. We are getting leaks one after the other. Yesterday, I reported on the 14.1-inch MacBook Pro, as well as some other products in Apple's lineup that will be using mini LED display technology. And now today, it looks like we are getting even more leaks about some upcoming Apple products that might be announced pretty soon. And these new leaks come courtesy of the Twitter account CoinX, confirming that we will be getting a triple lens camera system on the 2020 iPad Pro. We pretty much knew that at this point, but there was also a surprise leak that a new 2020 iMac and a 2020 Mac Mini are about to be released soon. CoinX was responsible for letting us know the Pro naming scheme for the iPhone 11 Pro, the 10.2-inch and 10.5-inch iPads, no headphone jack on the iPad Pro with the exact 5.9mm of thickness, information about dual SIM cards, information about what charger would come with the iPhones, the iPhone XS Max's weight, and the iPhone XS and XR naming scheme. So again, at least to me, CoinX has basically never been wrong with any of his specific predictions, and it looks like we will be indeed getting a 2020 iMac and 2020 Mac Mini pretty soon. And this does line up with previous reporting that Apple has some products ready for a March event, or maybe they'll just release these via a press release in the month of March. But aside from this one tweet, there is very little details about this upcoming iMac and Mac Mini, so for this video, I wanted to go over what we should expect with these product refreshes. First, let's start with that 2020 iMac, because I think that this would potentially be a bigger update than the 2020 Mac Mini. So I've done a video on this before, basically covering what I would like to see with a 2020 iMac redesign, but a March release date is sooner than I anticipated, but it does make sense. The last iMac was released in March of 2019, so an update does make sense based on a yearly update schedule. But, like I mentioned before, CoinX is basically one of the only rumors we have about a 2020 iMac coming out soon, and we haven't heard any major leak or major redesigns that might be coming to a future iMac. Sure, Apple could do a few simple things that maybe wouldn't get through the rumor mill, like shrinking down the black bezels and stretching the display out on the 21-inch model to 24 inches and the 27-inch model to 32 inches. Apple could even incorporate a 6K resolution on the said 32-inch model to keep the Retina designation, and it could even borrow design cues from the Pro Display XDR. However, and although it does pain me to say this, I haven't heard of any concrete leaks or details from the supply chain about a 2020 iMac redesign. Usually someone like Ming-Chi Kuo would report on things like maybe Apple is ordering 32-inch LCD panels that would be fitted into a potential 2020 iMac. And if Apple was doing something like that, a major redesign, it is likely that we would have heard about it through leaks and rumors through Apple's supply chain. So I am saying that there is probably a very low possibility that the 2020 iMac would have an external redesign. But that's not to say that there's nothing that Apple would do to redesign the iMac internally, and that's the sort of stuff that might not get through the supply chain leaks. For example, even though the 2017 iMac Pro looks exactly the same on the outside, minus the space gray paint, it did have a different internal design than the regular iMac, which allows for much better thermal management. Recently, we've seen Apple prioritize thermal performance on recent laptops like the 16-inch MacBook Pro, so we could see Apple take a similar approach here to ensure better sustained performance on this potential 2020 iMac. Furthermore, it is likely that we would also see other quality of life improvements, like better speakers or a better internal microphone, again borrowing from the design cues of not only the 2017 iMac Pro, but also the 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro. Another thing to note is Ming-Chi Kuo's report from yesterday, saying that mini LED displays will be coming to a lot of Apple products this year. It is certainly possible that Apple might introduce this first in a 2020 iMac and will offer an iMac that has a better display with better contrast ratios, brightness, and the ability to view and watch HDR content. Additionally, there are other improvements that Apple could make to the 2020 iMac display. For example, every Mac laptop now has a True Tone display, and even Apple's Pro Display XDR has the option to turn True Tone on. So I think we would definitely see something like that in a future iMac. Of course, the main reason that this iMac is probably going to be announced soon is because of a spec bump. And we might see that in the shape of 10th generation Intel Core CPUs with the possibility for 10 cores. There was actually an ad leaked by Dell recently that indicates that these chips will be released very soon. But there's also a wild card to consider: the use of AMD processors. Recently, we have seen leaks in macOS code that Apple has been testing AMD processors internally. And recently, AMD has been offering some pretty compelling processors that might make Apple switch away from Intel. Strangely enough, this could line up with a pretty sketchy rumor that Apple was going to make a high-end gaming iMac in 2020. Maybe that rumor got confused that Apple would be switching to AMD processors and then updating the iMac with enhanced AMD graphics. Speaking of graphics, I would also expect this 2020 iMac, whether it's using Intel or AMD CPUs, to get upgraded graphics cards in the form of the Radeon Pro 5700 series. Another thing I would expect is the inclusion of a T2 chip. Currently, the 2019 iMac is the only modern Mac that Apple sells that doesn't include this T2 chip. The T2 chip would do things like enhance security, allow for faster SSD speeds, and also do some video encoding. The T2 chip would also have further benefits, like allowing for 4K content to be viewed through your iTunes purchases or shows on the TV app. Another assumption I would make with a 2020 iMac is that this will be the iMac to finally kill the spinning hard drive. Currently, Apple does sell iMacs in the lower configurations that have a either spinning drive or a fusion drive. I would expect that these new Macs would get rid of those completely and offer just pure solid-state drive architectures. Because honestly, there is no reason in 2020 to buy a computer with a spinning hard drive. These make your computers feel really, really slow. So again, these are all the updates that I think we would expect for an updated 2020 iMac. And again, CoinEx is basically saying that these are coming out soon. So I would expect these in the month of March and maybe to be purchased in April. Now, the other Mac that CoinEx mentioned in this tweet was an update to the 2018 Mac Mini. Again, we haven't heard any other reports about a potential update to the Mac Mini, but like I said, CoinEx's track record has been pretty bulletproof so far. And again, for this 2020 Mac Mini, I wouldn't expect any sort of external redesign, and that's partly due to the fact that a lot of people use Mac Minis in server rack mounts, so changing the design of the Mac Mini right now would complicate things for those customers. So for the Mac Mini, again, I would expect things like a processor bump, maybe the inclusion of 10th generation Intel CPUs, probably with options up to an 8-core CPU, or again, the wildcard prediction that Apple might switch over to AMD chips inside of their Macs. But if I had to make a bet, I would say that Apple is going to stick with Intel, and I would be pretty surprised if they switch to AMD. One thing I would like to see included in the Mac Mini is, again, those new 7nm AMD graphics cards. And the reason I say this is because that the one weakness that the Mac Mini has right now, the strongest weakness it has, is in its graphics capabilities. I think that Apple should definitely offer the ability to get a dedicated graphics card inside of the Mac Mini. And the only other updates I can see to the Mac Mini is probably the inclusion of better solid-state drive storage pricing. So we might expect the Mac Mini to start at something like a 256GB SSD rather than the really small 128GB SSD that it currently starts at. Other updates like new speakers and a new microphone don't really exactly make sense inside of a Mac Mini, so I can't see Apple doing anything there. Again, one maybe external thing that the Mac Mini will support is Apple's Pro Display XDR, And again, I think that would really have to do with whether this new Mac Mini does support new AMD graphics, and it's one of the reasons why I'm leaning towards the fact that Apple might put a dedicated graphics card in the Mac Mini, so it's another option to drive that beautiful Pro Display XDR with a 6K resolution. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, CoinX also says that we should expect a triple lens camera iPad Pro to be coming out, but we pretty much knew that from all the rumors and leaks before this, and there is plenty of reporting on that potential 2020 iPad Pro. All right, everyone, and that's all I have to say about these products. I was definitely not expecting to be talking about a 2020 iMac today, and I was certainly not expecting to be talking about a 2020 Mac Mini. But I definitely want to hear what you think about these products. So please let me know in the comments below, what do you want to see out of a potential 2020 iMac or a 2020 Mac Mini? And what sort of features would get you to purchase these computers? As always, if you like this video, make sure you leave me a like. If you want to see more from my channel, well, make sure you're subscribed. If you want to support the channel out in any way, check out some of the links in the description. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.